Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Landscape and Garden Show with Bob and BT. Bob Harvey and Brian Turner. Hello, my friend.
Hello, how are you today on this fine spring day where
It is springy.
short sleeve weather?
I should have worn shorts today. I had a couple other things going on a professional level, so even though I'm wearing jeans, I really was aiming for the cargo shorts.
Yes.
I wanted that to be a part of my reality today. Maybe tomorrow.
You're going to get your chance.
I'll
I have a
get my
feeling
chance.
there's many opportunities ahead.
We've got the windows open here at the Alive and Social Network studios in South Minneapolis, so if you hear a Harley Davidson or some other rumbler, two-wheeler or four-wheeler making its way past on the street
Making its
here.
way to the garden store.
Yeah, maybe, huh? More like a four-wheeler in that regard. But if they got the loud pipes and they're heading to the garden store, we're okay fine with that. We're okay fine. We also like to welcome Lydia Turner here, my co-host on Foodie Friday. She's going to join in here on the program as well. Hello, darling.
Hey guys.
Welcome, Lydia.
It's
We're
nice
so
to
glad
be
to have
liked.
It's
I have a
important.
voice.
People like me. It's getting Sally Field-esque here for crying out loud.
You like me, I think so.
You really like me. It's important for us here at the Alive and Social Network to share some content and some folks between our shows. And so Lydia's joining in on our show for a bit today. And Bob, you've got an open invitation. We're going to have you on Foodie Friday on a day
Definitely.
soon.
so excited about it. I really am.
You know, you've got the big barbecue initiative going on constantly in your world. I know you got 5 boys at home, so that's that's a big churn as far as the dad man and your wife. But the dad man activities in the kitchen, whether it's
Yep.
the outdoor kitchen or
Yep.
inside, whatever the case may be.
Tremendous connection between what we do in the landscape and the gardening propagation industry to the consummation, having time to enjoy the fruits
Yeah.
of our labor.
Exactly.
I think it's kind of like going from the seed to the feed.
Indeed, it is.
Indeed.
Yeah.
From the seed.
Indeed, the seed to the feed.
Indeed.
We rhymed and we didn't even know it. And my favorite golfer from back in the day, Sam Snead. I'm just reaching for it now. I'm
Yeah.
just
Reaching.
on the heels of the Masters. I'm just reaching for it now. We're glad you're along as well. We're going to cover, given that time permits, we're going to cover what's blooming. We're going to cover a little more spring planting how-tos, something that we were hoping to get to on the show last week, and we want to chat about it this week, the California drought and just the unsteady rain that we're getting here in the upper Midwest. Other parts of the country are going through the same thing. It's either feast or famine, it seems, when it comes to the wet. Also, kids in gardening, and Lydia's here not only to talk about some of the new activities for her food-wise, but also she grew up with a landscape garden with a pond in the backyard, and we thought we'd share some reflections and some thoughts.
That's fun.
From her perspective.
I'm excited. Treehouse, pond, running around,
Tadpoles.
being a kid. No tadpoles, but koi fish.
Koi fish.
We had koi fish in the pond.
Yeah, we did. We had the koi fish and all sorts of plants in the pond and all that stuff going on. Also, Earth Day is nigh, and National Arbor Day, and Minnesota's celebration of Arbor Day is nigh also. So again, all those things and more as we spend some time together here on the Alive and Social Network on the Landscape and Garden Show with Bob and BT. All right, spring planting. We're into that in just a second, but moreover, things are blooming already, planting notwithstanding. So what do we got out there at this point in time in April, the middle part of April here?
Well, what we're seeing this year, it's excuse me, certainly a lot ahead of last year, is what is blooming is sticking out so much because it's the still the anomaly in our landscape, and as we get more and more knowledgeable and daring in how we plant and make our plant selections, we'll see more and more of those early spring bloomers. So the first thing out the door that you'll notice is the yellow flowering forsythia. Again, tokens in a lot of areas where they are planned and designed in areas that are larger and in mass is when they really make their statement.
When they make an impact.
Oh, my gosh. There's places back on the East Coast where they basically landscape the freeways with these massive hedges of forsythia.
So it's just walls of yellow.
Oh, and it just gets you going. I mean, it it just ups the ante on your outlook on the day, and it may be on the speedometer too. So you got to watch out for those speeding tickets. Gets the adrenaline going.
One would think
we
yellow.
get excited. excited to see green and color.
Yellow's more of a yield color. You'd
Yeah,
think
I
it would
know,
make
I
you,
know.
maybe slow
Yeah,
you down a
yeah,
little bit,
yeah.
but
It's a bright color. It's a
bri-
happy color.
It's
Yeah.
a happy color.
it's a pedal to the metal color.
Yes, and there's always a place for it. So that's one of the things that probably knows in the shrub category. Now, one that's a little more understated but certainly present is the florets that are coming out on some of the trees. Some people just call them the buds of the trees. And what we're seeing right now in two categories. One is the maple family. And in the maple family, we have the silver maples that are real common in our landscape, the sugar maples, the hardwood maples, the ones that make the syrup and the beautiful orange fall color, and then the rhubarb maple or the red maple. Now, that's not, some people think when they hear the word red maple, they're thinking of a maple that's red all summer long. That is not the case in the
Right.
true definition or term. A rhubarb maple is a category species of maple that produces red fall color on the leaves after being green all summer, but also the florets that come out in the spring are the most pronounced on the rhubarb maple of all three maples.
Of all the maples. Yeah.
So right now, if you're driving down
Okay.
certain streets in town where they've been lined out, so to speak, or in parks, you'll see these nice ruby red florets. And when they come out in mass, they really do make a great statement. So that's one that may go unnoticed by many.
So
but
both in
is important.
color and size.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in mass, because the
Okay.
tree is just dusted with all these
Yeah.
these red
Cool.
pops. And so in the whole design approach, we look at that and go, what else can we pair up with that that's going to accentuate that when it's in bloom? So it doesn't just stand alone. Or the lone forsythia all by himself, the one at the prom with no date kind of thing in the garden.
The lonely
The
forsythia.
lonely forsythia. So, and it's such a happy color. So,
Yeah.
anyway, we look at that, and then these big swelling buds on the magnolia. We have magnolias that are hardy in Minnesota, and we are having some issues with some of them in some parts of the metro. But despite that, they're swelling. They're getting ready to open. And they usually do about mid-April, so that's something you can count on. So in the tree category, the maples, the magnolias, we're starting to see this bud swell and a little bit of flower color they'll probably show in the next few days on the whole cherry family or the prunus family. So that
Okay.
would be your plums and your cherries. And
Just a bunch of hard stone fruit.
yeah, things that
family of
yes,
trees.
right?
Mhm.
Peach, if you're so lucky to have
Yeah.
some hardy peach.
A
which-
pear, perhaps. Yeah.
pear.
All right.
So those things tend to be on the early side of bloom, and God willing, if we don't get a early spring killing frost,
Yeah.
those things should carry right through to the next wave of color when the other things start.
Is there a Minnesota peach? I've never seen
there is
one.
a peach has been developed. When we talk about some of the hardy fruits and stuff on one of our segments, we'll get into the details about what they've discovered and what they're planting out now. Arboretum, of course, is a great resource to find out what we're doing in the peach category: apricot, plums, cherries, apples, grapes, all those things.
All of
So-
these fruit-bearing trees, can we eat them? Are these
Absolutely.
peaches that we can eat?
Yeah,
here?
they are. And again, they're really driven by conditions. And we don't have the most ideal conditions here for growing some of the fruits, but others have adapted, or we found them in the landscape to be already adapted. And then we propagate those through root cutting. So we basically replicate the actual genotype of the plant, and they catch root, and then you make more of those and more of those and more of
That's
those.
cool.
Well, you mentioned the last week's show, the cherry trees that you have.
Yes, and they bear beautifully, and they will be starting to show some color probably by the end of this week.
What's the fruit like that you get from those
Oh,
rascals?
the tart pie cherry.
Okay.
Make your
I'm
crisp.
into that.
Oh yeah, and you
Yep.
mix a few other fruits with it. Well, I'm just a cherryaholic, so let it be known out to the general audience.
If you're inviting Bob over
Yes.
and pie is on the
Yeah.
menu for dessert, you know which direction to go. He's made it very clear. What else is blooming right now, Bob
Well,
Harvey?
in the shrub category, we're going to be seeing very soon the rhododendron, the PGM rhododendrons and other sports of the rhododendrons starting to show color. And they're the ones that get that nice lilac-y pale lavender colors. Some can get deeper colors, more magenta. There's all various cultivars, and they're a semi-evergreen. You know, they keep the little round leaves for to most of the winter and lose a few. So those will be opening soon. So not too much more yet in the shrub and tree category. Our wild plum, American plum that grows natively in our woods, will be starting to show some color as well. And then Amelanchier is the scientific name, but a common name of serviceberry, the serviceberry tree, or shadblow bush.
I have one in my backyard.
Yes.
It's a great tree.
I call them the
One of
Mayday
my favorites.
tree, and they're nicknamed that as they usually are in bloom by the 1st of May.
You get some blooming, you get some great green in the summer.
Yeah.
You get those berries at the end,
The
and the
birds
birds
go
love
crazy.
them. And then you really get some nice color on the leaves in the fall. It's
Yeah.
like it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
textured tree.
It is.
It really is.
And when we have our segment on talking about the things that we can do to encourage and satisfy wildlife needs, that falls in there under a lot of categories.
Yeah.
So that's under tree and shrub. Then we get into the perennials. We have our bulbs that are now coming up. If we've planted daffodil bulbs, hyacinths, scilla, early blooming tulip, species tulip, those kinds of things are definitely showing their color. And in our palette that we use in our designs, we basically have 3 categories of bloom. So we'll have an early, mid, and late scheme of bulbs that we plant in the fall. It's one of those things you can really control in terms of extended bloom. And when we do that, you can count on 4 to even 6 weeks of color. If the weather is not too extreme, you will have a lot of spring color just with bulbs. Then in the perennial category, we're looking at things like our native pulsatata, which is the pasque flower. Those are getting ready to open, and they're just a tiny, fuzzy, silvery foliage with a pale blue or pinkish flower.
Kind of a low-lying guy
Yes.
on the landscape.
Yeah, they're just beautiful, and they're great tucked in amongst rock gardens and things like that. One of the other things that will be starting to come is the early spring violets, just the wild violets. Those are going to be coming up in the next week and showing some color. Our anemone windflowers, snowdrop anemones they call them. Those will be coming. Some of the things that are in bloom right now, in the, what we call the minor bulb category. We talked about major bulbs of tulips and daffodils. Now we're getting to one of those called the minor bulbs. They're little tiny.
Yeah, the little guys.
They almost look like little nuts or whatever. And so the Scilla family, which is that real piercing blue flower, comes up about
Love
3
those.
to 4 inches tall, can really spread and carpet an area. They dovetail lovely with that red bud flowering rubrum maple.
So if you're looking for something to balance,
If you
and
had
add
the
some-
blue under the red and then maybe a little bit of white, then you could salute it every time you walked through. But no, it does. They do help bring out the best in each other. Crocus, another minor bulb that are all getting ready to open. Some have opened. You know, you say, well, what's blooming now? Well, it depends on where you are. Are you standing on the north side of your house under the canopy of evergreens, or are you on the south side in full blasting sun? You can have a difference of 1 to even possibly 2 weeks
Oh, yeah.
of
We've
bloom
seen that.
time with the same plant. So things like
Almost little microclimates between the two.
They
I
are
mean,
microclimates.
In a strange way, when there's more snow on the ground as well, because you get that snow pile that just doesn't melt, and then that'll add even a few more degrees to the wait a while on that south side, on that
Right.
north side, excuse me.
So there, under the minor bulbs, you have those scillas. Then we have one called Pushkinia. And Pushkinia is really cute because it has a light blue with a deep blue vein of blue through it, and it's just a little lighter and brighter than the scilla, and that's really a nice early blooming bulb. Our epimedium, barrenwort is the common name. You'll see it grow in our woods. It is a very diminutive, dainty flowers that run from yellow to pink to red. And those leaves and flowers kind of come up at the same time. They kind of shoot up really fast.
Everything at once on that plant,
Yes.
huh?
Yes. And you know, this week particularly, we had a little rain a day and a half ago, maybe 3/10, enough to keep that ground wet at least in the first couple inches for a day or two. And so that's giving all these things a jump start, and the soil temperature is going up. So other things blooming. Oh, a lot of people have Pachysandra. You know Pachysandra, the evergreen ground cover that a lot of times go under trees and stuff where nothing else will grow. Very indestructible in terms of, pests or whatever, or varmints or deer. That actually has a little flower on it. It's not real fragrant, but it has a little bit of fragrance, and those are actually starting to open now and bloom. And in a week or so, you're actually going to see boxwood. You have a little flower come out.
Just a little bud coming out there.
Not necessarily something that we grow boxwood for, and sometimes the scent isn't the most desirable. It's okay. But everything has some sort of flower to it in order to propagate the reproductive process. So
that might be it. That might be our list.
Well,
of what's
one
blooming.
last thing, when it's not just flowers, when we think about things that are showing up in the landscape, is ginger. Our native ginger.
The wild ginger.
The wild ginger. I mean, it looks like it's like a little baby in a cocoon, and it's just all bunched up, and then the sun starts to come, this week, and you start to see it open up. It's one of the first things that shows in the spring. The other one, this is the last one that I'll mention that I think is very underused and could use a lot more spotlight, is bloodroot, which is our native plant as well. And it has these kind of sawtooth-looking roundish leaves and sends up a little white flower in the center. It looks like almost like a white daisy. They're not out super long, but what happens is as we go through the season and the flowers die back, the leaves just keep expanding, and they can get quite large. And they almost look like a clown's face.
A great ground cover then.
Yes.
Do they propagate a lot? Do they just send shooters out?
They're a moderate to slow grower, but they in the right place, they will make their statement. And then you'll get into some of the native wildflowers like jack-in-the-pulpits and lady slippers and things like that will be coming along. They're just starting to break through the ground. But, once they get to that point, then the growth accelerates.
Yeah. I did a bunch of wild geranium under a pine tree last year and just went out to check on them the other day, and it's just so gratifying to see all them little buds, just those little green guys coming up. My friend who I got the geranium from started with one. And from there, they spread like a son of a gun. And so I'm hoping for the same thing because I want that tree to have that nice green carpet underneath.
We could have a whole session just on the types of geraniums that we can grow here that are hardy. People think of geranium as something red in a pot by your stair.
Yeah.
And this is a perennial variety with many, many cultivars that can be very, very exciting. And they're an early show in the spring when the ground is pretty bare. They're showing their presence pretty early.
All right. I think we need to draw the line on what's blooming. I think we got a good list right there. That's a lot of good what's blooming out there. And make note of some of the plants that Bob mentioned here, because what we want you to do is think about putting those into your landscape, because you're looking for some spring color next year that you might be absent from in your garden now. These are the kind of things that you want to start thinking about, getting ready to integrate into your landscape in different settings and what have you, so that so you can get some of that spring color. Because there's nothing like spring color. If you can integrate that forsythia into your landscape somewhere, get some of those little scilla bulbs in there, whatever the case may be.
So of these plants that are blooming now, which of them are drought resistant? Are any of them drought resistant?
Well, the more native they are, the more resilient they are to the climatic fluctuations. So they may get set back if there's a severe drought and not much snow cover and real low temperature. Some of them may die back some. But ultimately, in the cycles, they can recover. I think of, several of those were ones that would be able to withstand. The bloodroot being an example, and some of the geraniums,
With the
Barrenwort.
forsythia?
Forsythia, yeah. Well, they have been tested in a lot of severe conditions, and what you'll notice some years with some of the older cultivars that were only ones available is in really cold winters, the shrub won't even bloom at the bottom half. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
okay.
Look at, why is this shrub just blooming on the
Yeah.
bottom and there's no flowers on the top? Well, what actually happens is the plant tissue, the stem tissue, and the greenery in the root system are hardier than the flower buds. So even though it's the flower buds above the snow line, so if we have 2 feet of snow on the ground,
Sure.
the shrub sticks up above that snow line. Been a really harsh winter like 2 winters ago, there may not be any flowers because the flower buds themselves are not hardy. But they were protected under the mantle of snow below that.
Sure.
So then those will bloom. So what all of our researchers have been doing is finding those hardiest flower buds. The shrub itself is hardy enough, but the flowers, that the main reason why people want that particular shrub is what they're trying to perfect in terms
Yeah.
of hardiness to temperature.
Yeah, so they'll pull those flowers
Right.
out and use those to propagate the next generation.
They'll keep experimenting with different cultivars until they create a new strain, testing under severe conditions, and you'll see variance in color as well. Some will be more pale, and some will be brighter yellow, and of course their goal is just to keep that potential splash in the landscape as optimal as possible. So.
Well, Lyd, you brought up the drought resistance or lack thereof.
Yep.
Your question was open-ended about some of these Minnesota plants. We're going to segue into the California drought because I did want to bring that up on the show today. But let's get into a couple of spring planting how-tos before we segue into more of the drought stuff, Bob. Where are we at right now? Raised beds, straw baled gardens. I mean, can we start setting up any of this stuff? Should we be getting that tiller in the ground at all at this point if we're going to do some veggies somewhere in the landscape and in the garden area? Are we at a point now where we can really start turning over that soil and making some forward motion that way?
Absolutely. We because we're on the lighter side of moisture, the soil is workable without being mucky.
Okay.
So we have a good balance between aerated soil and the soil texture, and an opportunity to start incorporating some of the organic elements to get it ready for growth.
So that's nice. I mean, yeah, because you want to get out there.
Yeah, I have clients right now that do a lot of gardening on their own. They enjoy it very much, and they're already sowing seeds for their cold weather crops, the lettuces and spinach and beets and like the brassica family cauliflower and peas, so snow peas, those kinds of things that can survive the cooler temperatures. So that's already being done. It's also a time where before some of the perennials are totally awake, i.e., okay, you can do this in December if you want. Daylilies, for instance, when you get the clump that looks like the kind that's going to sneak up on you when you're sleeping at night because it's been in the same spot for 10 years. It's 5 times the size of the 4-inch pot.
Waiting.
Yes. It just looks like a chia pet on steroids.
I love the sneaking up on you at night.
Well,
that painted quite a picture.
Yeah, it's like one of those good neighborly things. You on your block, everybody's offering their Stella D'Orio daylilies as a neighborhood token of friendship.
Please take some. Please.
Yeah, please, just take these off me. Yeah. So it's things like that are absolutely indestructible. It's a good time. If things that are blooming early in the spring to early in the summer, we leave those alone.
Okay.
So our irises, peonies, those kinds of things, if they're spring and early summer blooming, we don't want to touch them. But the things are going to go later in the summer. Seed them. Mm-hmm. Now you seed them. Now you don't.
Doing. You'll be here all week, by the way.
Yeah, right. And I don't charge extra for
2
the
cups
humor.
of fertilizer minimum. It's all good.
But that's an easy one to do. And people wonder why some varieties, particularly, they grow up and then they fall over and split. They part like hair, right down the middle, is because of 2 things. One is they are in need of division. And number 2, if the soil's extra rich in nutrients, sedums are one of those minimalistic kind of drought-tolerant plants that doesn't require all that extra stuff, i.e. moisture and nutrients. And so they just grow They outgrow
So
themselves.
if it's given it, it's going to go.
Yeah, it gets too vegetative, I
Yeah,
guess
okay.
would be the term. So it's a good time to divide some of these perennials.
Okay.
And there's just a couple examples right there. Asters would be another one, and phlox, garden phlox.
Yeah.
So if you think about things that would be blooming mid-summer or late summer, one of my favorite plants that I like in the landscape for structure, color, texture, and control, behavior, well-behaved plant. Yeah, if you can think of a few kids like that, this is the plant that would emulate them. Is called turtlehead or chelone, Chelone. A very, again, underutilized plant, wonderful plant. It's like a perennial form of a snapdragon almost. It has like a little snapdragon flower on it.
Cool.
So it's a good time to divide those kinds
Yep.
of things. Other than that, I would say
Go ahead and get that shovel in the ground. Start turning that soil.
Using a pronged fork,
Yeah.
like a four-pronged garden fork, not a hay fork. Start working the soil
Busting
a little bit.
that up a little bit.
Yes. Can finish raking up any debris, get it out of the beds, and start adding your organic matter.
All right.
Finish up the pruning of your roses or any of the summer blooming shrubs, woodgelias, roses, hydrangeas, those things. Keep on those until you have them to the size that you want, because they're going to shoot up really fast. And that's good.
That's a good spring planting.
I'd be very impressed if
round
listeners
right now.
out there got all these things done before the next podcast. And feel free to get back to us and let us know how you did on a
How'd you
scale
do
of
there?
1
Yeah.
to 10.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking we might hear some 4s and 5s, an occasional 2, and maybe 1 or 2 8s or 9s. We got the really motivated ones out there.
Well, you just can't be intimidated by it, even if you're a
Got to
beginner.
get out there and go. Yeah, you got to get out there and go, and don't be afraid to pull up those dead guys and get those cleared out right now too.
Exactly.
Get ready for spring planting. All right, let's segue to the California drought, because I was at a wine event last night that I hosted and emceed. And I had 4 winemakers from the Trinchero family of wines, 3 of them working in the Napa Valley, and 1 of them working in Amador County, which is a little bit south and east of Sacramento as you approach the Nevada border, so in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And for 3 of those 4, they, as winemakers now, they were saying in the Napa, St. Helena, areas that they're growing their grapes. There's a little bit of worry about water in the long run, but for it as it stands right now, not a big issue. Other parts of California issuable.
Yeah.
But the last winemaker that I asked, Chris Lamy from Amador County, his first word when I asked him, "All right, Chris, these other 3, everything seems to be fine. How about you?" He goes, "We're terrified. We're absolutely terrified." Because the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers in the area where he is, the water rights to those rivers had been sold 100+ years ago. When the gold ran out in that county, that was the heart of the gold rush in the 1800s in California, that whole area. The next resource or lineup of resources, water among them, was sold off, and those water rights went south. And so they're extremely worried where he is. So it was a really unique contrast, and I'm seeing that in reports from people out of California, where in some areas, the northern part especially, a little more water-laden, because that state has been bent on taking water from the north and moving it south. But then other areas, Los Angeles, Orange County, and then certainly the growing areas, Imperial Valley, and the Central Valley, they're having major issues, as we all know about. So what does that hold for us here, Bob, as far as plant material and other things? A lot of, obviously, food that we eat comes from that part of the world. Do we source a lot of plants that make their way to Minnesota, that make their way then in turn into the garden, that might be affected that way because of the drought?
Well, because of the whole greenhouse industry and propagation industry, we can pretty much get access to any plant
there you go.
material
Sure.
anywhere in the nation and in Canada and outside the country. But most of it occurs within the 50 states and also Canadian provinces. I think of some examples, some of the fruit producing plants can come from Canada. Some of the roses, when we talk about roses, we talk about the Canadian Explorer series of roses that are, if they're hardy in Canada, they're hardy in Minnesota.
Sure.
Believe it.
So they're researched and developed up there at the Manitoba Station, and so they've been tried down here in our test market and have survived beautifully. So because we can create those propagation environments, we can pretty much get access even on a very local level, which in some ways is really a plus for the entrepreneur and the small business locally to support them. So when you go to your farmer's market and you're looking for certain types of young plants, vegetables or floral, perennial tree shrub, you know that these people have provided what is necessary for them to become good marketable plants. And if they, just like anywhere else, due to conditions, have a failure, the product simply wouldn't be available. They wouldn't be able to sell it. So I think what happens is when we get comfortable with everything coming from so far away, and then all of a sudden that starts to get dicey, is that we start to pull in and think more locally. So our co-ops and our farmers markets and things benefit from that because there becomes more of a direct contact, a direct relation, and it's important enough that if it's a few cents more or whatever, that doesn't matter because it's just more tangible.
We're certainly seeing that in the food world. I mean, that's been a trend for a long time, the whole local and localvore movement. And with the guests that Lydia and I have had on Foodie Friday, we find that out from chefs left and right.
Yep.
Does the same thing happen for landscapers like yourself and other folks that do this for a living and that work with clients? Do you encourage that same sort of thing? Buying locally, and if it's a little bit more, it's a part of just a mindset that supports people that are literally your neighbors?
Yeah, I think that to me in our business, and the reason why we are very successful in our venture is that it's a relational experience that's built on not just one-time event, but something that has many events associated with it going forward. So we may do phase one of a project and build something in the backyard, but then other things expand beyond that. Cultural, familial habits and activities change in the private home residential sector, and so people are like, okay, it's time to ditch the swing set. What are we going to do? Like, can we put an arbor? Can we grow grapes? Can we do hops? Can we? And then to being able to be there and be that resource when those changes start to take place, that's fun and it's adventurous.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And it keeps challenging the whole design process to be fresh and resourceful. So I think that doing things locally like that, you get to know where you're. It's like your people that do it with whether it's apparel or groceries, or I go here to buy this because it's a really good deal, and you eventually start to do that with your plant. There's only one person I'll buy my tomatoes from. Some people will say.
Yeah,
when
they go to the market,
it's not
right?
Even so much that the plant may be the exact same cultivar as somebody else, but because it's connected to a person.
There's a relational
thing, and there can be follow-up. People want to be able to know that in our situation here right now, that there's a way for them to follow up and say, I missed this about what you were saying. How can I find out more about this?
Or that there's accountability too.
Accountability, exactly. And when you go back to these people and say, you know what, I have another one. If that had a problem, let's take care of that. So I can speak from experience using local sources, and just one example, the farmers market in both St. Paul and Minneapolis, that it's been 30 years where I have developed relationships with some of those vendors. So when they see me coming, they know, I've got this for you, Bob.
Yeah.
Or, yep, got this. Hey, there's a new, are you familiar with the new cultivar?
New cultivar.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And so there's a healthy competition between all the vendors because they're vying for your business. But that's also means that there's more to go around when more people are responding to that.
Do you make some pretty regular trips to both those markets?
To me, it's part of what I call ritual, because in the landscape, the most successful projects that we've done always incorporate a sense of what is the ritual that's performed by the client on a private, personal, residential level, but also even on a commercial level. When I started my business 29 years ago in St. Paul, it started at this one little storefront, the Bibelo stores. Everybody knows the Bibelo store. I was there with the first one. And it was the first one to open the inside into the outside by having this attention to some detail and some color and some flowers and stuff in containers. And boom, the people that work behind the cash register said, there were 30 people that came in here and said, I saw the front of your store and I just had to go in.
Yeah, how about that?
So,
how about that for
there's-
advertising and marketing?
Well, it's advertising, and it's a sense of community and a sense of, and it's a conversation tool.
Yeah.
So that becomes ritualistic. So then, before you know it, people are looking forward. When are the boxes going to be planted? When are the flowers coming? When are the street cafes going to be out? And then they look for the next chapter. What happens after May or June or July or for Christmas season and so that ritual becomes so much a part of it. They don't necessarily articulate it verbally, but it's in there
yeah,
mentally.
it sure is.
That's a really cool aspect to really be thinking of actively in planning this garden is what do I want this to be for me? How do I want to be interacting with this space? And it's like you said, it's not something that someone really says. I'm thinking about the rituals that I'm going to be participating in.
How I'm going to hold my book in my lounge chair.
But like maybe they should be thinking more actively about that. That's really fascinating.
What we do is we get to know these people. We sit in the situation literally and say, how would this appear through their eyes or through their activity? Where do they want to be facing when they're grilling? Where do they want to be working in their planting? Where does that garden get set up where they're going to be in it every day? And what's going to make it a easier experience and a gratifying experience? And so that's all part of it.
Yeah,
and so I think that the whole level of local, yes, we're going to be affected by things that happen on more of a mass scale. We may not get the California strawberries this year or next year or whatever, but you know what? We may have phenomenal strawberries locally, and they're going to be coming. They just come later.
Yeah, that's right.
And there'll be organic options, and so there you go.
Well, and it may move a little further north then as well. You
Yeah.
know, we might start getting more of this these plants growing outdoors in further reaches of northern Minnesota,
Right.
just further climates, northern
Yep.
climates. Aside from the fact that every time I go to Costco and buy a bag of peppers, they all come from Canada. The greenhouse, they're all greenhouse
yes.
ones, but they're tasty, they're good, and they do a nice job.
Well,
so
the whole hydroponic gardening thing is on the rise too, and that's something that can be done anywhere as well. Again, you're creating those environments that produce a really high quality product.
we were talking about, and you were mentioning getting to know that client and getting to know their family and what they do and what they like. And so one of the reasons we wanted to have Lydia join us on the show here is to, first off, tell us about her new job. And so we'll get some foodie insight from her on the Landscape and Garden Show with Bob Harvey and Brian Turner here. But also, when we did our landscape backyard at the Turner household, the kids were much younger. I mean, we did this 13 years ago this
was
summer.
11.
Yeah, so to have that thought process applied to our family was a unique experience. And so I wanted Lyd to kind of answer to that a little bit as far as kids and being in the garden and having a role in the outdoor space and all of that kind of stuff, and just how that creates memories that you carry forward with you as well. But first, the new gig. Tell us about your new job.
I have a new job at Coastal Seafoods. I'm working in between the Minneapolis and the St. Paul stores, and I had my first day yesterday, and it was absolutely spectacular.
A red letter day.
It was a red letter day on all counts, and I got a cat yesterday.
What? Two things. Two big
Two
things.
things. I got called in for a second interview for another job. I had a great day at my new job. I got a cat. I had pizza luce.
Oh, well, everything's down the line
Everything
looking good for
looked
Lydia
good.
Turner. I
Everything
hope today's
worked
as good as yesterday.
I hope so.
Indeed.
Well,
really nice.
I'm looking forward to being on one of those foodie sectors where we're preparing
Where we're
some of
making
that
some food.
phenomenal stuff from Coastal Seafoods.
Oh, yeah.
Being a native New Englander, I'm really interested.
I
We're
shucked
gonna
an
make that
oyster
so.
yesterday. Got to eat on the job. It was pretty awesome.
And good quality stuff. Great quality.
Yeah,
they sure
super
do.
great quality. It's almost
Yeah.
overwhelming to look at the cases and there. It's like, oh, I have to know all of these and their prices. Interesting.
I'll
Okay,
get there.
We'll
Yes,
get there.
Yes, I shall. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
But going back to kids and gardening and
Yes,
kind
please.
of memories that I have, and it also segues perfectly into talking about strawberries because I immediately thought of the alpine strawberries that we incorporated in our backyard and how those would blossom and how they would bear fruit. And so it was a part of the ritual of going into the backyard and going and harvesting the strawberries.
Those little baby ones.
They're
Yep.
super teeny weeny, but they're so delicious.
Oh, the flavor is just over the top.
They're
Yeah.
power packed.
Yeah, they
They
sure
are.
are.
They're power packed. They're little time bombs of flavor that the big bulky
They don't get.
Yeah. That is a design element I've been using for literally for decades, and they're only, again, getting back to the local sources. There are only certain people, number one, that know about them, and number two, that can supply you with them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not something that you're going to find necessarily in a more big box store kind
Well,
of
same holds
experience.
true with Edelweiss and in our
Yeah,
landscape,
yep.
because when we initially did the landscape, and we've morphed it
Yeah.
since then,
Yeah.
but it was intended to be an alpine slope with streams coming down, coming into a pool area, into our swimming pond area. And so it was a whole lot of those low-lying plants, the sedums and the Edelweiss
Yep.
and the wild
Yep.
strawberries and all that kind of stuff that initially made their way into the garden. Those strawberries and the Edelweiss live side by
They
side in our
thrived,
garden.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, and the strawberries are still going strong, and I will still pick them. Although I have to clean a little bit more because we have dogs that wander back there. But that's easy. That's easy to do.
They make a great mixed perennial border when you're even doing formal gardens, and because the alpine strawberry, unlike more of the other types of strawberries we think of that have what we call stolons that radiate out
Yeah.
and can literally
Take over.
become become a ground cover. The alpine strawberry is like a mini bush
Yeah.
strawberry.
They're so
They
Stays
cute.
stay
compact.
compact and tidy. They almost make like a little herbaceous hedge, and then you get the little white flowers early in the summer, late spring, and then the little red berries. And a lot of them are hidden underneath the leaves, so you got to
Yep.
go
You do
searching.
have to
for 'em.
harvest.
So there's a little ritual with that. So they're just. They look beautiful with roses. So if you're doing a formal garden setting, they make a great border around rose gardens, and they're very versatile.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
we also
versatile.
wanted a playground area, a family play area, which is why we integrated those waterfalls, but moreover that swimming pond.
Yeah.
And share with us some of the memories that you have, with you, your brother, friends. I mean, quite a few of them in that backyard.
Oh yeah, no. So it got completed. Our backyard was completed when I was 12. So I've known it for most of my life. It's always been there, and it's always been this sanctuary of time and space, and talking about rituals, like just going back there to read or to have a glass of wine, or like when I was 16 and had a bunch of people over, and many of my friends not knowing that there was, oh, you have a pond back here? And I have a fond memory of Tucker, who, it's only a 4.5 feet deep pond.
That's a swimming pond.
Yeah.
You can get in there and get wet.
It. Yeah. And at this point, I think we still had koi fish in it too.
Yes, we did.
But we had a bunch of people swimming in the pond, and Tucker goes to dive into it, and Dad's stuff. Hey, hang on. I don't want any accidents in this pond. You have to be careful.
You were in the water. Let me share the story from Dad's perspective, because I saw my homeowner's insurance depleted in the millisecond as I watched Tucker make his way into the pond. We have stone steps
Yeah.
that go in from the side of the pond.
Yep, there's an entryway.
And everybody was down in there, and Tucker wasn't. And so he thought these were just, he could see the steps. Well, doop. I'll just walk down these steps to make my way into the water. And there's a little bit of algae and a little bit of something on all those steps. And so that first step that he hit with his foot going into the water made him fly up ass over tea kettle. And thankfully, he was going with enough momentum that even though his feet flew up from under him, he was pushed out into the water enough that when he smacked and hit his back pretty
was just
flat,
water.
he was already in the water, because the steps go down pretty quickly. But had he not been, those rocks were pretty big and pretty solid.
Treacherous.
And like I said, in that one instant, I saw everything happen. In
Yeah,
that
I blanked
millisecond.
that part out
Yeah,
entirely.
in a millisecond, I saw the ambulance show up. I saw him in traction. I saw the insurance paperwork. You just see all that stuff
So
happen.
that's an extreme example of us really abusing the space almost.
But that being said, everybody witnessed it, and then they were like, "Okay, we're chill, we're good."
Well, there's a lot of placid moments that we still have in that place, but definitely with the koi fish that we had in the pond and creating a ritual of feeding the koi fish, and we would smack a rock on another rock, and they would all kind of come towards you. They knew it was feeding time, and they are smart fish.
Yeah, they sure are, and beautiful ones too. Now we've made a transition to turning it into more of a low dose salt pond, rather than the koi pond, so that just we can get some more use out of it, and a little more ease of use, and a little less of the organic cleaning and all of that kind of stuff that goes on. And it's a good transition.
We're going to have some really exciting segments all on the whole water feature
Yes, we will.
category, and in the pond category alone, the options that a lot of folks don't even know are out there. Can be really exciting.
I was thinking about that today, and indeed, I'll echo your sentiments in the weeks ahead on the Landscape and Garden Show. We'll definitely do that as we get into more of those late spring and summer weeks ahead. But I was driving to my doctor's office today, and Weber Park in North Minneapolis is under construction with what they said, according to their signs, the nation's first public natural swimming pool. And so we're seeing that happen in North Minneapolis. And so we'll bring you more info on it as we get closer to it opening. And as Bob mentioned and as I echoed, more of that conversation coming up in the weeks ahead.
I'm very familiar with that project. And one of the associates from that project actually works with Edelweiss now and is assisting us in development of those natural pond swimming
environments, those literally nature pools is what we're seeing there, and natural filtration and everything going into it. No matter how many kids make their way in there.
This has been big in Europe for decades and decades.
It has.
It's just made it to our shores, literally, where the concept has been slow to catch on.
Well, can we let's make a point of getting that consultant on the
He'll be
show?
on.
Yeah, because that would be a
Adam,
great conversation.
He'll be very excited to talk about his experience of
that's really
participating
neat.
in that. He's still part of the management process of that particular project. We'll be working on it, and he was excited to share that because it's
wonderful.
about getting the word out.
Yeah, and I like the fact that if this is a nation's first, which the sign says it was, and I'm going along with it, that it's adding to the parkscape of North Minneapolis, which really needs more of those kind of amenities as opposed to other parts of Minneapolis. And the same thing can be said true of St. Paul. There are neighborhoods that need more of that kind of engagement, that natural engagement for the kids especially, but the families and also individuals. So kudos to the Minneapolis Park Board, and congratulations on what looks like it'll be a remarkable achievement for the Park Board and for North Minneapolis particularly.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be neat.
And Lydia, you've given a wonderful example of how important it is. I'm being the father of 5 boys, active, physical, outside, that kind of thing. How much a role that being involved in the natural surroundings,
Totally.
of the landscape and the water, and doing those wonderful, fun things. It's essential to overall life experience as you go through life, and having a knowledge and a comfort level and an understanding of how our environment works and how you become stewards for it by being in it and responding to it and advocating.
Totally. Just fostering the appreciation of the outside and creating a space outside. It's not just about what can I do inside. It's, well, what can I take outside and do the same thing?
So
another room.
like getting kids involved in the kitchen.
Yep.
The same thing holds true anytime you can get those kids out there getting their fingers dirty, even if they're just little punks, and you find a small trowel or a small rake or something, some 3-tined unit that they can just get in the dirt and just play in the dirt, but give them something that has a little purpose to it as well. I want you to dig a hole for me here, and then I'll have you dig another one here. And it may be, and it probably will be, an imperfect hole, but they'll see you finish the job off with their help. and they'll see that plant go in the ground, and then they'll mound that dirt around it, put a little water on there, and then go to the next hole that they helped to start or maybe finished completely digging, and the same thing will happen again and again, and it'll imprint things in their mind that will last forever.
Well, and similar, like a little kid brain, they memorize the names of dinosaurs. I wouldn't shy away from explaining a little bit more with what this plant is, what it's going to look like, what kind of care it needs. And I'm not surprised if there are kids out there that are like, oh, yeah, that's a rhododendron. You're 4. How do you know that word?
Yes. Well, I say that in my own kids, that the more time they spend around, even if they're just observing and watching what's being done in our own yard, or a couple of them work for me in the summer, so then they're out in the professional world as well, is that they retain that information and that experience, and then they find that they're not intimidated by it then, that they have a comfort level and that it contributes to their overall experience.
Yeah.
A real good thing, too, is to look at what your kids like to eat. And if you might have a salad kid in your family, but more likely you'll have a pizza kid. And so with that being said, get some plants out there that will sort of match the things that they like to eat. Mm-hmm. And so they'll be actually growing foods that they like, whether it's the little alpine strawberries, as Lydia was alluding to earlier, or the green peppers that'll be a part of that pizza that they like so much, or some onions in the ground if you're doing a veggie garden here, obviously. But any number of other things that might add some beauty to the garden, but also can be edible, and you'll surprise the kids maybe by planting a few nasturtiums and weaving those petals into a salad or something that the kids will be eating. What? I didn't know you could eat a flower.
A pansy?
Oh, just the edible flowers. That we'll have a segment on that of things that can be used for decoration as well as
a leaf lettuce is a good example of a nice border plant that
Absolutely.
You can eat. Mm-hmm.
So, and all the different mints, lemon balm. There's all so many different things that make that outdoor eating experience, just takes it to another level.
And obviously, if you have the space, you can't beat a pumpkin, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
You can't beat that experience.
Yeah. When I think about the cherries that I harvest in the month of July, I think about after they've been fresh frozen, and it's Christmas holidays coming up, and decide to make a cherry pie or cherry crisp or something from my own garden. You know, I've harvested these cherries and other fruits, but whatever it is. And the only way I can express it is when you take your first bite, you just go, wow, it tastes just like July.
Well said.
That's all you have to say, because it's the ritual, it's the sensory thing. It transports you back to that time and when those things were growing and so forth, whether it was around someone's birthday party, wedding anniversary, baptism, whatever it is.
Yeah, the tomatoes in August. Yeah.
And these things are tied to events, and that's where the ritual part comes in, family reunions, all those kinds of things. And so the whole landscape, because it's always changing and evolving, it's asking us to be proactive in planning and anticipating the next outcome.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we use in the landscape process. Is where's this going to lead us? A couple months after delayed gratification.
Mm-hmm. And it's a series of delayed gratifications, because obviously you're planning for all of the different phases. We talked about the spring blossoming that's happening right now, but we'll have some June blossoming, July, August. The color changes that'll happen as we get into the autumn. All of those are factored in to the game plan.
I wanted to get back to the California drought thing when you're talking about Napa and some of the concerns over the water issues. And a lot of people aren't familiar with the fact that we here in Minnesota have access to growing grapes and harvesting grapes, and that wine is produced right here in our own state.
Yes, we do.
Again, these are things that have been researched and developed at the Minnesota Arboretum. We have some, they've been tried and tested, and different results and different tastes. But there's several grapes that do grow here, and they require similar practices as if they were grown out on the West Coast or New York State, where the pruning, late winter, early spring pruning of the vines and those kinds of things take place. But, excuse me, But there's 3 or 4. One's called the Crescent, which is kind of a light colored
that's the
golden.
big kahuna of the cold climate grapes. And by the way, I'll throw some props out, and we need to throw some props out to the folks at the University of Michigan as well. They've been significantly involved, just like the U of M and the U of Wisconsin too, but Michigan particularly so. In
The Marquette grape.
yeah, there you
The
go.
Marquette grape was introduced here in 2006, resists downy mildew, powdery mildew, and black rot. With open, orderly growth, wine has a complex notes of cherry, berry, black pepper, and spice, both on the nose and palate.
Yes, indeed. Those.
How's that sound for appetizing?
Into it.
And they've not only been growing them, it's a twofold process. Like anything, when it comes to what you're going to consume, they're growing it to grow in this environment, but also to be tasty and be grown in this environment. It's taken a while. The journey's been a long one, and they're not done at all by any means yet.
Right.
But they keep working on it in a real forthright manner, and it's just wonderful that we get to enjoy, literally, the liquid fruits of their labors.
I was going
Don't
there.
You were
forget-
going there, too.
Don't forget the Edelweiss grape.
And
either.
yeah, make sure you remember that one,
Edelweiss
too.
grape, large clustered white seeded table grape with a Concord-like flavor, may need a little winter protection, so we might do more of a southeast facing
There you go.
situation with that.
No problem there. Good stuff to put into your garden also. Well, I'm Brian Turner. There's my show co-host, Bob Harvey. It's been another edition of the Landscape and Garden Show on the Alive and Social Network. Good to see you as always, Bob.
Don't forget, this is the month for planting trees. If you have any questions about which, where, and how, give us
Give us an email.
a shout.
So you've got info at Edelweiss
Design.com.
singular design.com, or you can buzz me an email at btvoice, BEETEA voice at gmail.com. And a special thanks to my daughter Lydia and my Foodie Friday co-host here on the Alive and Social Network for joining in today as well.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Earth Day and National Arbor Day, and of course Minnesota's Arbor Day, as we join you next week with the Landscape and Garden Show here on the Alive and Social Network. Thanks for listening.